Astronomers are building massive observatories in the hope of creating an accurate map of the entire universe. But what we find there defies any logical explanation. The data from these instruments do not match any of our established cosmological models. We have always relied on rigorous equations to estimate the distribution of cosmic matter. Calculations show a uniform probability of galaxies existing in all directions of observation. Researchers were completely confident in the infallibility of the standard physical model of the universe. Telescopes were supposed to detect predictable star clusters and ordinary voids. Instead, the instruments detect a colossal void that shouldn't be there. Our established model of the universe has collided with a harsh and utterly incomprehensible reality. The universe is incredibly vast and full of surprising, yet entirely explainable, physical possibilities. According to all laws of gravity and mathematics, space should be a relatively homogeneous place. Huge clumps of matter should alternate with moderate voids in a predictable rhythm. Gravity would inevitably form a cosmic web, according to strict and understandable rules. We expected to see the familiar grid of galaxies in any section of the night sky. But instead, we stumbled upon an anomaly that shatters all the basic rules. Our technologies for studying the sky grow more powerful with every new astronomical season. Engineers are constantly creating increasingly sensitive instruments to scan the infinite expanse of space. These instruments detect even the faintest signals, reaching us from unimaginable distances. Each new generation of sensors allows us to peer into corners of the cosmos that were previously hidden from our eyes. We strive to understand how this vast tapestry of stars and galaxies is structured. We launch giant orbital observatories far beyond the interfering Earth's atmosphere. In the vacuum of space, nothing prevents the light of distant stars from reaching the mirror lenses of our instruments. These telescopes see the universe with incredible clarity and without the slightest optical distortion. They transmit data back to Earth that allows us to build the most accurate models of the cosmos. Thanks to this, our understanding of space is growing at an astonishing rate. They capture astonishingly detailed images of the most ancient reaches of our cold universe. These images reveal the first seeds of life in our universe, which emerged billions of years ago. We can examine the structure of the first star systems, which were just beginning to form. Every pixel of such an image carries a colossal amount of scientific information. This allows us to literally travel through time, looking at light from the distant past. According to everything we know, the cosmos should have a very predictable structure. We are accustomed to believing that matter is distributed throughout it according to specific and logical rules. Astronomers carefully study the distribution of matter on gigantic three-dimensional maps of the starry sky. These maps show us where the densest clusters of matter are located and where empty voids lie. We have spent years building this coordinate system to navigate the boundless night. Galaxies always gather into huge clusters under the influence of powerful gravitational forces. Gravity acts like invisible glue, holding billions of stars together. These bright clusters form long filaments that pierce through the entire void visible to us. Scientists call this structure the cosmic web, which unites the entire universe into a single network. It looks like an orderly and majestic dance of matter in space. Between them lie ordinary dark spaces, which science calls cosmic voids. These are enormous bubbles of emptiness, where there are almost no stars and none of the bright light we are accustomed to. All these processes are perfectly described by the standard physical model of the formation of our universe. We were certain that our mathematical formulas fully explained the existence of such empty zones. Physicists saw no mystery or cause for concern in this. In theory, we understand very well exactly how these familiar voids are born. After the Big Bang, Matter was distributed with small quantum fluctuations in the density of space. Simply put, in some places there was slightly more matter, and in others slightly less. These tiny differences at the very beginning of the universe's journey predetermined the future shape of the entire world. Over time, these disparities became increasingly noticeable and widespread. Denser regions began to slowly draw in the surrounding hydrogen gas. Gravity caused matter to flow toward specific centers, forming future galaxies. Less dense regions gradually emptied, giving their meager material to growing neighboring clusters. Thus, zones of exclusion, devoid of building material, began to appear in space. This was a natural process of energy redistribution in the young and hot universe. Over billions of years, this straightforward process shaped the modern web-like structure of the universe. We have always considered this mechanism to be completely transparent and functioning flawlessly everywhere. In any part of the sky, we expected to see the same familiar pattern of matter distribution. Scientists believed that there was no room in the universe for random and inexplicable anomalies. It seemed that nature's grand design had finally been fully revealed to humanity. The average size of a typical cosmic void is usually about 100 million light-years. These are truly vast spaces, but they are never completely empty inside. Even in the deepest void, one can encounter solitary wandering stars. There are still rare dwarf galaxies and invisible filaments of dark matter. These regions are simply less populated than the bright and densely populated stellar metropolises. A typical void is simply a vast region with a lower density of cosmic matter. Scientists view them as a completely natural and safe part of the grand galactic landscape. We have grown accustomed to their existence and have learned to account for them when compiling stellar atlases. To us, they were merely a backdrop, highlighting the brightness and grandeur of the stellar filaments. No one expected that the void might conceal something terrifying. Our supercomputers are capable of brilliantly modeling the evolution of the universe from the very moment of its birth. Complex programs spend days calculating the movement of every massive particle under the influence of gravitational forces. Virtual digital models perfectly match real observations from our optical telescopes. We see the same picture on our computer screens as we do through the lenses of the most powerful cameras. This gave us a false sense of complete control over reality. We have learned to predict the size and shape of ordinary voids with astonishing mathematical precision. Every new day, we process petabytes of information without the slightest doubt of success. Our calculations were confirmed time and again, reinforcing our faith in the immutability of the laws of physics. We felt in control, capable of explaining any phenomenon in the sky. It seemed that in this orderly system, there simply could be no serious errors. It was a normal, stable, and very comfortable model of our predictable reality. We sincerely assumed that the fundamental laws of gravity operated identically in absolutely every sector. The scientific community was fully confident in the imminent completion of mapping the entire observable cosmos. We were preparing to put the final stamp on the study of the structure of space. Everything was going according to plan, and the future of science seemed cloudless and clear to us. The reliability of our distance-measuring methods left no room for doubt, even among the most ardent skeptics. The equipment functioned flawlessly, and the complex equations seemed mathematically flawless and complete. All that remained for us was to plot new nebulae on the vast three-dimensional stellar map. We methodically scanned the relic microwave radiation left over from the creation of the world. It always serves as an ideal thermal background for studying the earliest stages of the universe's life. These ancient thermal imprints provide us with the most precise information about the density of primordial matter. We were looking for confirmation of our smooth and mathematically elegant theory of the evolution of space. All the basic parameters clearly pointed to a high probability of our imminent and complete triumph. It was a well-thought-out, safe, and incredibly logical strategy for studying the world. Scientists across the globe worked as a single, perfectly coordinated scientific mechanism. No one doubted for even a second that the picture of the universe would remain predictable forever. We sincerely awaited the very day when the last blank page of astronomy would be filled. It seemed merely a matter of time and the power of new computing systems. Physicists were preparing to joyfully celebrate the final victory of the human mind over the mysteries of nature. Reality then seemed to us to be completely controllable and subject to strict rules. But time marched inexorably on, and routine observations suddenly yielded truly shocking results. Long years of meticulous analysis of the microwave background of our vast and cold universe passed. The cosmic heat map began to reveal something utterly unimaginable in the southern constellation of Eridanus. At first, it seemed like mere bad luck or a minor technical glitch in our probes. We carelessly attributed these strange dark data points to poor sensor calibration. But we were profoundly mistaken in our optimistic and endlessly naive scientific expectations. But we are seeing something that simply cannot be according to the laws of physics. The instruments showed a perfect, frightening temperature anomaly right in the southern hemisphere of the night sky. This region was so unusual that scientists at first simply refused to believe their eyes. It stood out against the general background like a huge dark spot on a blank sheet of paper. Such a deviation from the norm did not fit into any of the existing theories of the time. This strange region was given the dry but alarming scientific name Relic Cold Spot. Data from orbital satellites did not merely fail to align with our well-established theory of gravity. They completely and unequivocally refuted it with every new attempt to calibrate the equipment. The temperature of the microwave background in this location turned out to be abnormally and unnaturally low. Such a temperature difference in space was considered a mathematically impossible event. Instead of the expected microscopic temperature fluctuations, we suddenly encountered a massive, icy cosmic void. This dark spot is much colder than the rest of the cosmic microwave background radiation surrounding its edges. It feels as though all the thermal energy has simply been sucked out of this part of space. It didn't resemble the usual fluctuations we're used to seeing in other parts of the sky. Here, we've encountered something completely different and terrifying in its scale. It's as if some colossal entity had ruthlessly carved out a massive chunk of energy from this sector of space. We can't find even the slightest hint of a logical explanation for this temperature paradox. Astronomers are staring in panic at a sector where the laws of thermodynamics are behaving completely abnormally. Such a huge cold spot simply doesn't fit into our basic mathematical framework. We've had to admit that our understanding of heat and cold in space might be wrong. The more precise and expensive our satellites become, the colder this eerie place appears. Previously, we could easily and carefree attribute this icy anomaly to outdated orbital technology. Scientists sincerely hoped that a new probe called Planck would quickly resolve this issue. We thought that the camera's higher resolution would reveal the true picture hidden behind the noise. However, reality turned out to be far harsher and more disheartening for science. But the new ultra-precise instruments only harshly confirmed the frightening reality of this temperature scar's existence. This unprecedented technological clarity only further emphasized the absolute wrongness of what we were seeing. Each new image made the anomaly even clearer and more undeniable. We could no longer pretend that this was simply an error or a lens defect. The universe was telling us directly that there was a serious flaw in its architecture. At first, we genuinely thought it was an unfortunate and gross error in the instrument's software. For months on end, engineers checked every tiny electronic component on the orbital space telescopes. They dissected the algorithms down to the last detail, trying to find a hidden error in the data processing code. The experts hoped to find a logical technical glitch that would explain everything. But all the tests showed that the software was working flawlessly and without any issues. They persistently searched for blind spots, digital glitches, and defects in the microwave-sensitive receivers. None of the researchers wanted to believe in such a terrifying reality of monstrous cosmic proportions. The specialists stubbornly recalibrated the ultra-sensitive sensors hundreds of times in a row to be absolutely certain. We tried to find at least some excuse for the fact that the instruments were detecting a void where there shouldn't be one, but the numbers remained the same, despite all our efforts to double-check them. It turned out that all of our highly sophisticated equipment was working perfectly and with incredible precision. The instruments were picking up thermal signals without any distortion in other parts of the night sky. If the error were in the sensors, it would have shown up everywhere, not in just one specific spot. The problem definitely did not lie in our equipment or the mathematical algorithms for digital processing. We realized that we were looking at a real physical object, not technical noise. And that's when we began to clearly notice something truly incredibly strange and frightening. This relic cold spot bears no resemblance to a simple statistical fluke. Under natural conditions, such sharp boundaries of cold simply cannot arise on their own. It looked like an artificial scar on the body of the universe that shouldn't exist. We felt that we had encountered something that went beyond our understanding of nature. Natural, chaotic space always generates small, random temperature fluctuations. But what we clearly see before us is an absolutely smooth and unnaturally huge temperature vortex. The collected digital data looks as if a gigantic region of space is completely devoid of radiant energy. This is completely unlike the familiar small fluctuations left over from the Big Bang. It is as if someone or something has wiped matter from this gigantic and cold sector of the sky. Astrophysicists rush to find a physical cause that could have so quickly removed so much cosmic heat. The only mathematically logical answer turned out to be the presence of a giant supervoid directly in the path of the ancient light. When the cosmic microwave background radiation passes through this colossal void, it inevitably loses its initial energy. The light seems to cool down as it tries to traverse this boundless space devoid of a single star. This complex effect of the expanding universe is known in physics as the Sachs-Wolf integrated effect. Ancient photons expend too much of their energy trying to escape the colossal gravitational well of the void. We immediately pointed Earth's most powerful optical telescopes toward the constellation Eridanus. Scientists decided to manually count all the visible galaxies in this incredibly cold and dark direction. We wanted to make sure that there really was no matter there capable of emitting light. And what they suddenly discovered there sent a nervous shudder through the entire scientific world. Right before our astonished eyes gaped a colossal black void in the very fabric of space. We found that very great void, also widely known today as the Eridanus supervoid, and its truly gigantic dimensions completely shatter our understanding of the physics of the universe. This discovered void turned out to have a monstrous diameter of nearly 1 billion light-years. Modern academic science simply does not know of any processes capable of creating such a deep void. This is by no means an ordinary void, like the hundreds we've seen elsewhere in the galaxy. It is an unimaginable megastructure in which about 10,000 massive, heavy galaxies have vanished without a trace. The laws of classical gravity simply should not have allowed it to grow to such terrifying dimensions. Puzzled scientists hastily began constructing new, even more frightening mathematical computer models. old theories of the steady expansion of space are quickly being consigned to the trash bin. The scientific world suddenly found itself on the very brink of a massive and unprecedented cosmological crisis. With growing alarm, we realize that reality is far more complex and incomprehensible. Our previous knowledge turned out to be merely a superficial glimpse into the true nature of things. We have encountered a mystery that cannot be solved using old physics textbooks. Our familiar picture of an ideal, symmetrical world has suffered an irreparable and incredibly deep crack. And here, the situation becomes significantly worse and more confusing. This is not just a single strange observation in one isolated sector of the boundless night sky. The Eridanus supervoid is so enormous that it completely distorts the overall physical picture of our world. Scientists are cross-referencing their 3D graphs and, with growing horror, realizing the true scale of the madness unfolding. This is a colossal hole in the universe, one whose size exceeds all conceivable and inconceivable limits. We are truly dealing with a phenomenon that shatters all our familiar scientific frameworks. For clarity, it is worth comparing this object to something we already know well. Ordinary empty regions of space seem like mere specks of dust against the backdrop of this colossus. The diameter of this anomaly spans an astronomical billion light-years from one edge to the other. Even light requires an unimaginable amount of time just to cross this dead zone. A significant portion of the universe as we know it could easily fit inside this colossal sphere. None of the familiar terrestrial or even galactic scales apply here. At first, researchers naively thought that the phenomenon could be easily explained by the simple merger of several ordinary voids. In space, it does indeed happen that small structures eventually merge into larger ones. Scientists hypothesized that several empty voids could have simply collided at their boundaries and formed a megastructure. We attempted to simulate this complex gravitational process on the world's most powerful supercomputers. The machines were fed algorithms that perfectly described the behavior of ordinary cosmic matter. It was expected that the program would produce a logical and understandable scenario for the formation of such a void. Astronomers entered the parameters of the standard model, where ordinary voids merged together over billions of years. But the virtual results turned out to be even more disappointing and alarming for modern theorists. The machines stubbornly showed that even the entire history of the universe would not be enough for a merger of this scale. The usual laws of physics resisted the formation of such a gigantic void in our virtual simulations. In our universe, there is simply no physical mechanism capable of clearing a space 1 billion light-years wide. This mathematical barrier became the first serious wake-up call for the academic community. This ominous void extends far beyond the limits of our meager human understanding. It spans a territory that could easily accommodate millions of galaxies like our own. With a normal distribution of matter, this region should be ablaze with the light of billions of stars. It should be teeming with violent star-forming processes and giving birth to new young planetary systems. Instead, we observe a deafening, icy wall of absolute cosmic silence. This is far more frightening than the most violent and powerful cosmic cataclysms. Scientists had hoped to find at least a faint concentration of invisible dark matter there to balance the mass. Dark matter always acts as an invisible, dense framework upon which the structure of all galactic clusters rests. If there are no ordinary stars, then an invisible gravitational signature should still have appeared on the radars. Instead, they discovered only a dead vacuum and a complete, total absence of any of the building blocks of the universe. The problem turned out to be truly cosmic in scale, and it threatens to destroy the entire foundation of modern cosmology. The foundation of our knowledge of gravity began to crumble rapidly right before our eyes. In an attempt to find at least some answer, We changed scanning ranges hundreds and thousands of times. Researchers shifted from familiar radio waves to deep optical and high-energy infrared observation spectra. We actively used X-ray sensors from the best orbital stations to peer into this darkness. We searched for hidden massive galaxy clusters that might be lost in this gigantic cold abyss. Astronomers desperately tried to detect even the slightest gravitational anomalies at the edges of this dead and empty zone. It seemed to us that all we needed to do was change our astronomical search method to achieve ultimate success. But this strange barrier of cosmic emptiness holds true at absolutely every observable wavelength. Infrared sensors detect no hidden, life-sustaining heat from dust clouds within the Eridanus supervoid. Optical telescopes do not even register the faint glow of dwarf stars or dying old stars. Radio frequencies also bring only a monotonous noise to Earth, with no signs of complex cosmic objects. No matter can disrupt this perfect, eerily empty space of immense diameter. All our technical ingenuity crashes against the insurmountable wall of the fact that there is absolutely nothing inside. With every new, incredibly expensive study, the scale of this fundamental problem only grows rapidly. New orbital probes bring back data that only makes this black hole on the maps stand out even more starkly. The planet's brightest minds have finally realized the absolute impossibility of a random statistical glitch on such a grand scale. This is a terrifying structural anomaly that is deeply embedded in the very fabric of the cosmos. Nature abhors a vacuum, but here, for some reason, it has made an incredible and eerie exception. We are faced with a phenomenon that flatly refuses to obey the general rules. The deeper we peer into this dark abyss, the more clearly we see its utterly artificial appearance. It looks as if a huge chunk of our reality has simply been ripped out by the roots. The boundaries of this dark object are too sharp and regular for natural, chaotic formations. It's as if someone took a giant eraser and mercilessly wiped thousands of galaxies off the map of the starry sky. This evokes an overwhelming sense of unease, even in the most pragmatic and dispassionate researchers. Science categorically dislikes miracles, but here we are dealing with precisely an impossible phenomenon. This phenomenon effectively blocks any attempt to reconcile it with the standard lambda CDM cosmological model. This model works brilliantly for the rest of the universe, but here it suffers a complete and crushing failure. Scientists around the world are racking their brains over the physical nature of this inexplicable vacuum mega-phenomenon. No modern theory of quantum gravity is capable of logically explaining such a massive void. We are faced with an object that openly mocks our conceptions of space and time. The entire academic literature has proven completely powerless in the face of this monumental void. In search of a solution, astrophysicists began reanalyzing the rate of the universe's expansion following the Big Bang. Scientists revisited the calculations of the inflationary model, which describes the fractions of a second after the beginning of time. At that very moment, the young universe was expanding at an unimaginable speed, forming primordial energy clusters. Researchers had high hopes that this vast void might have been laid down in those very first fiery moments. But cold, hard mathematics ruthlessly rejected even this last, desperate scientific lifeline. It turned out that not even quantum fluctuations could have grown to such monstrous sizes in that region. To create a hole with a diameter of 1 billion light-years, an initial curvature of incredible strength was required. And we realize with horror that our physics does not allow for such strong curvatures in principle. The primordial flame of the universe's creation was too homogeneous to give birth to such a monstrous vacuum giant. If such a distortion actually existed, it would have simply torn the universe apart at the very moment of its birth. This results in a paradox where the object actually exists, but its existence is mathematically and physically impossible. It is a dead end from which modern science currently sees absolutely no logical way out. This is definitely not a local phenomenon that can simply be ignored or brushed aside. We cannot point our massive telescope in another direction and forget about this monster forever. No matter where we look afterward, we are inevitably reminded of the existence of this gap in the sky. The ether surrounding this zone is so empty that it causes genuine academic panic among researchers. This completely contradicts the very basic nature of a turbulent, chaotic, and densely packed universe. It is no longer possible to ignore such a gaping wound in the fabric of space. Just imagine the true and terrifying scale of what could have caused such an effect. Clearing space over such vast territories requires truly incredible, unimaginable energy. It is a colossal repulsive force that far exceeds the gravitational capabilities of entire galactic superclusters combined. A power unprecedented in nature must have existed to scatter billions of stars in different directions. We know of no natural physical processes of such a high and destructive structural level. This lies completely and unconditionally beyond the limits of our modern earthly material science. And if you think that the size of this hole is the biggest problem, you are sorely mistaken. The most terrifying aspect of the Eridanus supervoid lies not at all in its incredible and monstrous dimensions. The true horror lies in the age of our universe compared to this colossal structure. Our world is now about 13.8 billion years old, and by all laws of physics, this is catastrophically little time for the formation of such a void. The gigantic object we observe requires a much longer history of slow development. The laws of gravity act extremely slowly over such colossal intergalactic distances of cold emptiness. Gravitational pull simply cannot instantly displace a cluster weighing millions of billions of solar masses. To clear a region with a diameter of 1 billion light-years, galaxies would have to move at incredible speeds. Matter would have to fly out from the center of this void faster than is physically possible. Covering such distances would require violating the fundamental speed limit in the cosmic vacuum. The universe simply did not have enough time to sweep this sector so neatly and cleanly. Our math screams that the Eridanus supervoid is older than the universe itself. This terrifying conclusion sounds absolutely absurd, but the cold, hard numbers refuse to lie or bend to our expectations. We are faced with a complex mathematical paradox, similar to a situation where a child turns out to be older than their parents. Researchers double-check the formulas time and again, sincerely hoping to find a simple error in their calculations. But every new calculation only confirms this terrifying temporal misalignment between the void and the rest of the cosmos. It is no longer possible to brush off this soul-chilling truth or try to silence it. This discovery completely shatters all our timelines of the evolution of outer space and clusters of matter. We have spent decades constructing this beautiful chronological scale, meticulously verifying every stage of stellar development. If the structure could not have formed naturally over 13 billion years, where did it come from? Either our estimates of the age of the entire universe are fundamentally and catastrophically flawed at their core, or this gigantic hole formed as a result of a process that violates the speed of light limit. Both of these ideas force us to seriously and anxiously reflect on our place in this crazy world. It turns out that we live in a universe that seems to deliberately throw impossible chronological paradoxes at us. We thought we were reading a clear, open book, but it turns out that entire chapters have been brazenly torn out of it. Physicists cannot artificially stretch the lifespan of the cosmos so that the void has time to grow undisturbed. Any change in the age of the universe will inevitably lead to the collapse of all other related scientific disciplines. The stars around us burn as if they are truly about 13 billion years old, not hundreds. A sharp scientific conflict arises between what we have long known and what we now see on our monitors. Either outer space itself, for some unknown reason, is behaving unpredictably in this specific region. Perhaps the passage of time within this abyss operates according to entirely different physical laws, alien to us. Or our entire theory of the expansion of space requires an immediate and very radical complete revision. We have suddenly found ourselves in a situation where the very foundation of physics is cracking under the weight of a single object. This single, massive anomaly poses a serious threat to the work of thousands of brilliant scientists over the past centuries. Science has frozen in anxious anticipation of answers it simply does not yet have. The true scale of this temporal anomaly simply defies comprehension by the ordinary, unprepared human mind. We are accustomed to thinking within the framework of short earthly centuries, at best operating with the millennia of our ancient history. Here, however, we are talking about tens and hundreds of billions of years, erased without a trace by an unknown cosmic force. This is most certainly not a local error in calculating the motion of several dozen neighboring galaxies. The problem is of a far more fundamental and profound nature for understanding the very passage of cosmic time. It is a serious system failure in the very main program governing the cosmic clock. We have encountered a phenomenon that appears as though it has always existed, even before the birth of stars. Perhaps this void is an ancient scar, left to us as a legacy from the previous cycle of the universe's life. This gigantic gap seems to mock our primitive attempts to measure the history of this world. It is surprisingly smooth and suspiciously empty for a structure that supposedly grew amid the chaos of expansion. The ominous void is equally devoid of matter across its entire billion-kilometer diameter from edge to edge. Nature is extremely averse to such a frightening and precise geometry under conditions of random thermal processes. No theorist can write a formula that would account for this growth over 13 billion years. Any complex equation inevitably breaks down at the stage of calculating the ejection velocity of matter from this cold region. All mathematical models show that this would have required hundreds of billions of years of evolution. Only then would gravity have had time to so slowly and thoroughly clear such colossal areas of excess galaxies. This glaring time deficit becomes an insurmountable obstacle to any logical explanation of the phenomenon that has arisen. We are up against a brick wall of dry numbers and completely unsolvable physical equations. For many years, we romantically imagined that the universe was growing like a vast yet comprehensible living tree. We saw its luminous branches in the form of stellar streams stretching through the darkness of cold space. Scientists sincerely believed it was possible to trace the growth of each branch back to the very first trunk of the singularity. We thought we could freely rewind time on a supercomputer and arrive at a smooth, uniform point. Cosmological projects studying the early universe were built precisely on this positive and firm concept. But now it has suddenly turned out that this tree has a hollow that is larger than the tree itself. The artificial or natural process that created this hole worked incredibly quickly and efficiently. It was not a classic slow outflow of matter, but a rapid and ruthless cleansing of a gigantic sector. Galaxies were ejected or absorbed at such a speed that we cannot even see their traces. Usually, such monumental events in space leave behind a vast amount of residual radiation and dust debris. But they vanished, leaving behind neither gas, nor dust, nor even clusters of invisible dark matter. This crime of cosmic proportions left researchers without a single piece of meaningful evidence. As a result, This gigantic sector of space has been permanently erased from the ordinary history of our world. We see only an empty shell, the origin of which is hidden behind an insurmountable barrier of time. We can only speculate as to what exactly wiped out an entire ancient era from this part of our starry sky. Fresh data from the latest ultra-powerful orbital telescopes only confirm astrophysicists' worst chronological fears. Instruments like the Webb telescope find no signs of young matter that could fill this void. The void remains pristine across all possible optical wavelengths and scanning frequencies. Moreover, this void anomaly itself has surprisingly sharp boundaries with the rest of the universe. The transition from densely populated space to an icy vacuum occurs alarmingly quickly and with extreme abruptness. Physicists see frightening patterns in these abrupt transitions from dense clusters to absolute nothingness. It looks as if someone cut out a piece of reality with a huge cosmic scalpel in an instant. Such geometric regularity is simply not characteristic of the wild and completely unbridled nature of the cosmos. Our brain instinctively begins to look for a hidden purpose or intelligent intervention from outside in this. This block of matter is too regular and stable for a typical spontaneous and slow natural phenomenon. Random processes of galaxies scattering through space usually create jagged edges, not a perfect spherical void. Under normal circumstances, neighboring star systems would gradually blur these boundaries with matter. It looks exactly as if someone incredibly powerful has established strict rules for the physical game here. Such geometric precision forces researchers to discard most classical theories of star cluster formation. The scientific world has found itself in a peculiar chronological trap from which there is as yet no obvious way out. Each new generation of telescopes will repeatedly come up against this most complex chronological puzzle. We will have to seek out incredibly bold and unconventional approaches to explain the existence of such an ancient monster. Perhaps one day we will discover entirely new equations capable of reconciling this void with common sense. But for now, this terrifying mystery continues to stare coldly at us from the dark depths of the night sky. And only now, after decades of searching, have we begun to timidly grasp these harsh laws of temporal inconsistency. Our time and the time within the Eridanus supervoid seem to have flowed according to completely different physical scenarios. If standard gravity could not push matter apart, then a completely different force, unknown to us, was at work. And if this unknown physics operates there, then our models are incorrect everywhere without exception. The fundamental laws of nature must be the same in every corner of the observable universe without exception. An error in calculations over gigantic intergalactic distances implies a critical error in the most basic principles of science. We cannot simply ignore this fact and continue using old physics textbooks. This applies not only to the distant and utterly unreachable edges of cold space. Such a failure in the laws of nature forces researchers to completely rethink the entire modern academic framework. Precise mathematical formulas suddenly cease to work when applied to vast empty spaces. It turns out that we have studied only a small and very tranquil part of the infinite universe. Our instruments detect only the tip of the iceberg of hidden cosmic interactions between matter and energy. The true picture of the world is hidden from us behind a veil of incredibly powerful and incomprehensible processes. This directly concerns the very place where we all are right now, in our galaxy. Our own solar system is subject to the same strict rules of the universal gravitational game. We, too, are an integral part of this strange reality, where such monstrous voids can arise. Such a discovery completely overturns our complacent understanding of our own planetary and stellar safety. We have grown accustomed to viewing our stellar home as a cozy and reliable fortress in the midst of the dark vacuum. What is preventing such an anomaly from beginning to form right now in our sector of the Milky Way? This terrifying problem is rapidly ceasing to be a purely academic mystery, far removed from ordinary people. Physicists and cosmologists can no longer calmly discuss it in secluded mountain or orbital observatories. It directly concerns the very basic structure of matter, of which we are all composed every day. A scientific paradox has suddenly turned into the most pressing existential threat to the entire human worldview. We are beginning to realize our absolute fragility in the face of the true scale of the universe. We have come to understand that space can be torn apart by forces we cannot even detect. Scientists are asking the logical question about the nature of a force capable of overcoming the gravity of billions of massive galaxies. The gravitational pull of stellar masses has always been considered the most fundamental bond of our stable world. If matter is being removed so effectively from such a vast region, what is driving it away? There must be an incredibly powerful repulsive force, severing gravitational bonds with astonishing ease. Classical physics simply lacks the appropriate terms to describe such a monumental phenomenon. We casually study dark energy, considering it a uniformly distributed force driving the expansion of all space. For many years, astronomers believed that this invisible energy acts equally smoothly in all possible directions. It should merely be slowly pushing the boundaries of the universe without causing sudden local cosmic catastrophes. But perhaps, in the Eridanus supervoid, this dark energy suddenly concentrated to an incredible density. Such a cluster of invisible power could have disrupted the fragile natural balance of gravitational attraction and repulsion. It acted like a colossal cosmic repulsive explosion, clearing a sector with a diameter of 1 billion light-years. This unknown energy swept away all the stars and nebulae as easily as a hurricane blows away autumn leaves. No supermassive black holes could keep their galaxies in their usual orbits. The process was so destructive and rapid that it left no debris behind. The great void appeared before us like a perfectly tidied room on a truly cosmic scale. In light of these grim discoveries, the most terrifying theoretical question of all possible scenarios arises. Scientists are desperately trying to understand the true mechanisms behind the creation of such a grandiose cosmic spatial barrier. If this absolute void was created by a cluster of dark energy, then why exactly in this place? Could such monstrous bursts of anti-gravity occur spontaneously at any other point in the universe? Any of these mathematical answers would make even the most cold-blooded researcher's blood run cold. For many decades, our greatest fear was the global contraction of the universe or its future heat death. The prospect of the stars slowly cooling terrified philosophers with its incredible hopelessness and cold meaninglessness. This seemed to us the greatest and most irreparable final tragedy for all material existence in the world. We desperately sought a balance of mass to reassure ourselves with a model of a stable and eternal universe. Scientists devised complex theories that promised the world a long and predictable fading away in silence. But now we realize with horror that space may simply be aggressively tearing itself apart, piece by piece. In the harsh reality, there may be no slow and peaceful aging of the cosmos. Dark energy is capable of unleashing its destructive power at any moment and tearing matter to shreds. Our ambitious future as a successful technological species suddenly finds itself under a massive theoretical threat. Humanity has always made grand plans to explore distant planets and far-off star systems. We sincerely planned to one day unravel all the mysteries of gravity and learn to control the curvature of space. Science fiction writers created beautiful worlds where people travel freely through subspatial wormholes. Conquering deep space seemed merely a matter of technological progress and sufficient time. Now, these bright dreams seem incredibly foolish in the face of a force capable of gutting 1 billion light-years. Our level of development is simply incomparable to the energies that form such colossal empty structures. We naively dreamed of complete control over physics and the free exchange of energy on a galactic scale. Scientists wanted to create a theory of everything that would unify quantum mechanics and the macroscopic gravity of the universe. The search for a single formula for the universe was the main goal of thousands of brilliant minds on our blue planet. Now, these hopes seem infinitely distant and, perhaps, completely unattainable for our minds. We have absolutely no idea of the harsh rules by which dark energy forms such colossal superstructures. We have turned out to be tiny grains of sand against the backdrop of an ocean in which invisible and devastating storms of anti-gravity rage. In scientific circles, a popular hypothesis regarding the instability of the cosmic vacuum itself is being voiced more and more often. Physicists suggest that the void may have different energy levels and suddenly change its fundamental properties. Perhaps the Eridanus supervoid is a place where the vacuum has transitioned to a lower energy state. This strange physical phase transition completely alters the laws of particle interaction that we are accustomed to. This process is called false vacuum decay, and it could destroy all matter in that region. The true vacuum bubble expands at the speed of light, obliterating all physical objects in its path. Inside such a bubble, neither stars nor planets, nor even ordinary light can exist. It is absolutely impossible to avoid a collision with this advancing wall of emptiness, no matter what technology is used. If this terrifying theory is correct, then somewhere in space, a new bubble may be forming, flying straight toward us. We have absolutely no idea whether this destructive spatial force follows any cyclical pattern. It could be a random quantum jump or an inevitable consequence of the evolution of any complex multidimensional universe. But we can clearly see the results of its incredibly effective and utterly ruthless work in Eridanus. The entire visible void is shrouded in deathly silence, and this silence resembles the scene of a colossal physical crime. And we do not know who or what is the killer in this vast detective story without answers. But there is another theory, and it makes reality even more incredible and alien. What if the Eridanus supervoid isn't a void created by the internal forces of our own universe at all? Theoretical physicists have proposed a concept that sounds like madness, but perfectly describes all the collected data. The cold spot could be a direct physical trace of the collision between our reality and a parallel universe. This is the multiverse hypothesis, and it takes our fear of the unknown to a whole new, massive level. The very idea of other dimensions was long considered the domain of writers and mad science fiction authors. Rigorous science has always demanded observable facts and irrefutable evidence for any theories under discussion. However, the unsolvable paradoxes of quantum mechanics have forced scientists to seek answers far beyond the confines of our cozy world. The idea of a multiverse became a lifeline for explaining many oddities in the behavior of elementary particles. Now this bold mathematical approach is being applied to the study of the largest and most daunting objects in the starry sky. We have always been accustomed to thinking that our Big Bang was a single, unique event in the void. Our expanding universe seemed to us to be the only existing physical object in an absolute, infinite mathematical nothingness. Scientists considered our world a closed system that arose from a single hot and super-dense point in the void. But string theory and inflationary models have long predicted the birth of countless other bubble universes. Such hypotheses transform our reality into just one of an infinite number of possible combinations of matter. In this eternally seething ocean of the multiverse, new worlds are born and expand every microsecond of eternity. They may have completely different physical laws, numbers of dimensions, and properties of elementary particles. Some of them die almost immediately, while others grow and fill with the light of billions of young stars. And sometimes, these gigantic bubbles of reality inevitably touch one another at their boundaries. The cosmos beyond our perception transforms into a seething foam of a vast multitude of living worlds. Imagine two enormous soap bubbles expanding and suddenly colliding in flight. At the point of their physical contact, a flat dent forms, deforming the perfect shape of each. Space warps under the pressure of monstrous forces about which we have not the slightest scientific understanding. It is precisely such a colossal dent that our relict cold spot in the constellation Eridanus may be. We are simply looking at the point of contact between our reality and something incredibly vast and alien. A vast and invisible parallel world crashed into the boundary of our universe in the early stages of its expansion. This epic event occurred when our entire cosmos was a tiny, incredibly dense ball of hot energy. This monstrous impact knocked energy out of this sector of space, leaving behind a gigantic icy scar. Matter simply could not form normally at the site of this aggressive interspatial contact. The result was a perfect void, which terrifies us today with its colossal dimensions. If this theory of a parallel collision is correct, then the situation is completely beyond our philosophical control. This directly implies that we are not merely not unique, we are merely a tiny part of an infinite foam of worlds. Our universe is not infinite. It has clear physical boundaries beyond which lie entirely alien laws. The human mind struggles to comprehend the idea that our entire vast cosmos has limits. We will have to accept our role as inhabitants of just one of many millions of cosmic bubbles. There, on the other side of the great void of Eridanus, there may be a reality with different mathematics and gravity. In that other world, stars may shine with a dark light, and relentless time may flow in the exact opposite direction. We do not know what that universe is made of, or by what rules it exists and evolves in the darkness. And we have just seen a bruise from the impact against this spatial structure, which is incredibly alien to us. This direct evidence of physical contact forever changes the vectors of the future development of all astrophysics. This trace in the microwave background effectively proves that our reality is vulnerable to external impacts. Scientists around the world are racking their brains over how to measure the properties of this other, completely invisible universe. We need fundamentally new instruments and theories to peer beyond the edge of our own universe. No modern instrument panel is capable of looking beyond the boundaries of our own space-time continuum. We are as if locked inside our own bubble and can only feel our way around the dent on its inner wall. And this realization causes the deepest existential shock even among the most steadfast and pragmatic modern astrophysicists. In search of a solution, researchers began reanalyzing the polarization of the cosmic microwave background radiation around this cold spot. Scientists are trying to find twisted vortices that would confirm a mechanical influence from outside our closed system. Ancient light at the edges of the void carries hidden information about the events of the very first moments of time. It turns out that the structure of electromagnetic waves at the edges of the supervoid does indeed exhibit strange and atypical patterns of curvature. These microscopic patterns behave as if space had been stretched by a monstrous external tensile force. The lines of ancient light are distorted in a circle, creating a regular symmetrical pattern around the icy anomaly. Such geometric phenomena do not arise by chance during the normal cooling of primordial hydrogen gas. This is the most compelling evidence to date that someone has pushed us very hard from the outside. Such a discovery calls into question the absolute impermeability of the barriers between different universes. This is definitely not a local intragalactic phenomenon that can be explained by a simple dark matter explosion. We cannot simply turn away and pretend that nothing else exists beyond the boundaries of our world. The surrounding ether is not simply empty. It is traumatized and physically deformed by interaction with something infinitely larger. This completely contradicts the very nature of the closed and self-contained universe we have believed in for so long. We are just one tiny ball in a gigantic cosmic game of billiards of completely unknown proportions. Just imagine the true and overwhelming scale of the space where these bubble universes float. To accommodate such a colossal number of worlds requires a truly unimaginable multidimensional mathematical structure of the highest order. This is a mind-boggling hyperreality that far exceeds the capabilities of our three-dimensional biological human imagination. We know of no way to even conceptually describe the harsh laws that reign in the space between universes. This lies completely beyond the realm not only of academic science, but also of the boldest science fiction. If parallel worlds can indeed physically collide with our bubble of expanding, warped space, what will happen next? Could these collisions occur again in the future, tearing the fabric of our reality to shreds? Scientists are seriously discussing the likelihood of new dangerous encounters with neighboring universes in the coming billions of years. Bold theories are being put forward that the Eridanus supervoid is merely the first and weakest blow to our world. Theorists publish dozens of new articles every day in desperate attempts to predict the behavior of these hyperspheres in the void. We have suddenly faced a threat that originates not from our own world at all. Despite all these grim and utterly fantastical discoveries, we continue to observe the spot. Huge telescopes regularly transmit information to Earth about the slightest temperature fluctuations in this cold sector. We are trying to hear even the faintest echo from a parallel reality through this thin membrane of space. But every glance we cast only confirms the presence of a gigantic, impenetrable void a billion light-years away. And we do not know if anyone on the other side is observing our universe through this very same indentation. And now, let's move on to the consequences that directly affect each of us on planet Earth. If our universe is just one of many bubbles colliding in an unfathomable multidimensional void, what are we? We have always considered humanity the center of the universe, at least in the philosophical sense of our unique rationality. It seemed to us that this entire vast reality was created specifically for our long and successful development. But the relic cold spot mercilessly sweeps this egocentric view into the dustbin of human delusions. This directly concerns our fundamental place in the hierarchy of true cosmic reality. Our home solar system is not even a grain of sand on the beach of the vast and boundless universe. We are a microscopic speck of dust inside one of billions of colliding soap bubbles in the absolute multiverse. Such a revelation completely overturns our complacent understanding of our own significance and the illusory planetary security of our existence. Our civilization turns out to be utterly insignificant in the face of structures measured in billions of light years. This terrifying philosophical problem is rapidly ceasing to be purely academic and beyond the reach of ordinary people. It directly shatters the basic sense of stability in the reality into which we are all born and live every day. A scientific astronomical paradox has suddenly turned into the harshest existential slap in the face for all of complacent humanity. Scientists are asking themselves, does our existence even have any meaning on the scale of infinitely emerging worlds? If universes perish and collide like raindrops, our history is merely a fleeting and random spark. In light of these grim discoveries, the most terrifying question from the realm of basic human psychology of perception arises. We desperately try to understand why we were given a mind at all if we cannot comprehend the surrounding multiverse. If this absolute void proves the insignificance of our physical laws, what can we possibly rely on? Who or what needed to create a brain capable of realizing its own absolute mathematical and physical helplessness? Any of these answers would plunge even the most optimistic and steadfast scientific researchers into deep depression. For many decades, our greatest fear was global catastrophes within our own tiny planetary system. The prospect of an asteroid strike or nuclear war terrified us with its unimaginable brutality and global senselessness. This seemed to us the greatest tragedy, and we desperately sought ways to protect our fragile blue world. But now we realize with horror that forces exist in space capable of erasing the very laws of physics. Against the backdrop of colliding parallel universes, all our earthly problems look like the frivolous activity of bacteria in a petri dish. Our ambitious future suddenly seems simply laughable in the face of the true scale of the vast universe. We sincerely planned to one day unravel the mysteries of neighboring stars and settle the nearby spiral arms of the galaxy. Science fiction writers created beautiful worlds of universal galactic prosperity for a united humanity and alien interstellar intelligence. We naively dreamed of peaceful contact and the free exchange of knowledge within our comprehensible local universe. Now these bright dreams seem incredibly naive against the backdrop of the realization that our world is merely a fragile bubble. In scientific circles, the popular idea of our deep and absolute cosmic isolation is gaining traction. Perhaps our reality is limited not only by the speed of light, but also by the walls of our own local physics. We are physically unable to go beyond the limits of our bubble, even if we build infinitely powerful ships. Any attempt to leave our universe will lead to the immediate destruction of the atoms in our human bodies. We are absolutely locked in our prison, and the Eridanus supervoid is a window we cannot climb through. We have absolutely no idea whether this hyperreality possesses any meaning or higher purpose. It could be a soulless, natural, multidimensional algorithm or the legacy of things we cannot conceive of. But we see very clearly the results of its incredibly vast geometry in the example of our cold spot of cosmic microwave background radiation. The entire observable universe is merely the interior of our hermetically sealed cosmic chamber. And we are doomed to gaze forever at a dent in the wall, wondering who struck it from the outside. The real and most pressing problem is that we cannot develop further conceptually. Since the discovery of this great void, we have hit an insurmountable limit of our empirical scientific knowledge. We are physically unable to send a probe a billion light-years away to test theories in the harsh reality of practice. The scope of our earthly capabilities is hopelessly small compared to the size of this single void alone. Humanity can only passively speculate, drawing beautiful but utterly unprovable mathematical equations on blackboards. Leading scientists are now experiencing a profound professional and personal philosophical existential crisis regarding the meaning of their work. Observatories continue their routine operations, but the atmosphere in the scientific community has become extremely heavy and oppressive. What once began as a bold exploration has turned into a realization of the absolute insignificance of our human species. Astronomers fear that we have already reached the limit of what we are capable of comprehending with our biological brains, and ahead of us lies only an endless and impenetrable wall of the unknowable, an infinitely vast structural void. But what if we have been looking at the problem completely wrong from the very beginning of our research? Perhaps the Eridanus supervoid and the incredible cold spot are neither a parallel world nor a gravitational anomaly. Scientists are beginning to seriously discuss a terrifying hypothesis that shatters the very concept of physical and material reality. It could be a system failure, a glitch in a grand, artificially created computational simulation of the universe. This theory sounds like the plot of a science fiction movie, but it perfectly resolves all the unsolvable mathematical paradoxes of the void. We have always been accustomed to thinking of the universe as a vast material object composed of solid atoms and energy. We sincerely believed that it was born as a result of a natural Big Bang from a singular, dense point. Stars and planets seem to us to be absolutely real objects, subject to the strict laws of physical mass and thermodynamics. But this mathematically perfect gigantic void looks completely unnatural for a chaotic and messy material world. It is much more like a software glitch, a cutout piece of code in a vast digital matrix. The blocking of galaxy rendering in this sector operates with the precision of a well-tuned but broken computer algorithm. Nature simply cannot create such smooth and gigantic barriers over distances of 1 billion light-years. When we look into this great void, we see the absence not only of light, but of the very fabric of space itself. According to the laws of ordinary physics, such cold spots should not exist there at all in such a frozen state. It looks as if our universe's graphics card simply couldn't render this enormous chunk of the starry sky. The suppression of matter in Eridanus looks like a desperate attempt by the system to conserve its precious computational server resources. The computer simply stopped processing the massive cluster of galaxies, which it deemed redundant or critically damaged information garbage. Rendering billions of complex star systems would have required an unimaginable amount of multidimensional program memory. Perhaps a certain processor inevitably froze due to a buffer overflow in this specific zone of our universal simulation. Therefore, the system simply erased this piece of reality to preserve the stability of the rest of the program. This perfectly and incredibly logically explains why space there abruptly ends in absolute nothingness. Rendering the ordinary light of distant galaxies is quite easy for any powerful quantum supercomputer of the highest order. But maintaining the gravitational interactions of tens of thousands of clusters is a colossal and dangerous load on the system architecture. That is why the cunning control program carefully removed the objects, leaving us only with a cold microwave trace of a software glitch. As a result, we find ourselves in a simulation that has begun to develop holes due to a lack of computational system power. Our modern, super-powerful telescopes are now literally bumping up against the invisible edge of an unloaded digital space. In ordinary video games, users often encounter empty textures when they go beyond the boundaries of the permitted world. They see huge bottomless chasms instead of ground, where they cannot step without the risk of falling through the textures. Eridanus's supervoid works exactly like this basic system gap in a virtual game engine. It is simply a vast section of the sky for which the programmers forgot to program physical laws and material objects. The distant shining stars surrounding this void are merely beautifully rendered digital models on the screen. And no light will ever appear within the void itself, because this sector has been strictly disabled by the system administrator. If this is indeed the case, then all of our earthly physics is simply a set of invented programmatic game conventions. The mysterious expansion of the universe is simply the gradual allocation of new RAM to expand the simulation. And the void of Eridanus is a bad sector on the hard drive of the very computer in which we all live. And the cold relic spot is simply residual information noise from the emergency formatting of that sector. The program protected itself from information overload and critical, irreparable failures of the basic universal hardware. Any excess cluster of matter was immediately cut off by special cleanup scripts at the deep hardware level. As a result, we found ourselves forever locked inside a cramped digital matrix that is gradually and obviously beginning to malfunction. And we can't even complain to the system administrator about this enormous black hole in our sky. Who could have possibly created this grandiose and infinitely terrifying computational construct of simulated human reality? Perhaps it is some incredibly advanced post-human race, simulating the past of its own dead present universe. Or we're just a random, unnecessary byproduct in a giant digital laboratory run by multidimensional programmers. They're simply tweaking environmental variables, observing the results of galactic evolution on their incomprehensible screens. And the removal of the Eridanus sector was just a minor bug fix that we, unfortunately, spotted through our telescopes. These invisible creators coldly watch as we rack our brains over their programming errors through telescopes. The absolute void of Eridanus is merely proof that our reality is illusory and profoundly secondary. We are fundamentally denied access to the control console so that we do not shatter the illusion completely and irrevocably. Any awareness of our virtuality immediately spoils the purity of this vast and cruel computational scientific experiment. Therefore, the whole will remain crystal cold and empty until the inevitable shutdown of our main server. We have come very close to the very edge of our understanding of the structure of the vast universe surrounding us. All of our latest astrophysical hypotheses inevitably lead to incredibly frightening and deeply depressing logical conclusions. Scientists are desperately and unsuccessfully trying to find even the slightest mathematical order in this global absence of matter. Whether it's a failure of expansion, a collision with a parallel world, or a grandiose and merciless quantum computer simulation matrix, the essence of what is happening remains absolutely unchanged and infinitely terrifying to our fragile human consciousness. We are forced to completely reevaluate our true and very humble place in this endless, cold void. We are incredibly small, intellectually weak, and utterly powerless before this ominous cosmic void of Eridanus. All that remains for us is to stand silently before this utterly insurmountable barrier of our own human ignorance. For many years, popular science joyfully promised us only a bright, cloudless, and grandiose cosmic future of knowledge. Science fiction writers described beautiful worlds of triumphant reason, where humanity had unraveled all the greatest mysteries of the deep universe. But the harsh and incredibly vast reality has taught us an extremely cruel and very cold academic lesson. The vast cosmos is certainly not waiting for us with ready-made, easy answers on the pages of a convenient textbook. Rather, it prefers to throw riddles at us that, in principle and physically, have no logical solution. The Great Void makes it clear to us that there are very strict limits to our biological, monkey-like minds, and we are forced to silently submit to this invisible dictate of a physical or digital environment that vastly surpasses us. Every new hypersensitive telescope now brings scientists far more fear than pure and sincere hope. We watch the observatory monitors very closely and with deep anxiety, afraid to see new anomalies, because every new impossible structure inevitably and brutally shatters our familiar, cozy, illusory world. If we find another such supervoid, we will have to immediately acknowledge the complete collapse of all of physics. This oppressive existential paranoia is gradually and inevitably seeping into all modern space exploration programs. The absolute void of Eridanus has long been our conceptual curse, yet it is also a stimulus for the mind. As long as the infinite dark supervoid silently gapes in the sky, we are deprived of the illusion of complete control over nature. People build megacities, develop neural networks, and naively plan for a stable, safe future on Earth. But ignorance of the true laws of the universe renders our existence an incredibly fragile and fundamentally vulnerable state. We instinctively avert our gaze from this great void, lest we go mad at the sight of its scale. But our basic human curiosity and thirst for knowledge are physically impossible to simply switch off. we will inevitably continue to obsessively study this ominous, cold void every long, clear night. Astronomers will stubbornly and desperately search for the tiniest crumbs of information at the edges of this invisible spatial barrier. Our young species is evolutionarily and genetically programmed for the ceaseless search for the ultimate truth about the structure of the universe. We are stubbornly driven forward by a thirst for knowledge, no matter how devastating this absolute truth may ultimately prove to be. We will persistently continue our observations at the very limits of all our current and future technical capabilities. Even if this bitter, ultimate universal truth threatens us with the complete collapse of the entire scientific system of values. This unquenchable curiosity is our greatest curse and, at the same time, our greatest superpower. It was precisely this curiosity that once compelled us to pick up stones and build the first, most complex radio telescopes. We are simply biologically incapable of stopping halfway toward unraveling the greatest and most dangerous mysteries of the universe. Perhaps one day we ourselves will safely reach an incredible level of understanding of this impossible geometric structure. We will overcome our current internal scientific crises and enter a completely new stage of conceptual development. We will finally understand, clearly and mathematically, why this gigantic hole had to appear there. And then we ourselves will voluntarily, consciously, and with relief rewrite all our old textbooks on theoretical physics. We will simply stop clinging to the outdated illusions of a cozy and understandable world, accepting the frightening truth. We will quietly, and with intellectual discipline, accept this great cosmic paradox for the sake of our own further development. This epochal event will become our final act of coming of age as a truly intelligent and conscious universal species. We will forever cease to be foolish and naive children who think they understand the workings of the entire galaxy. Humanity will learn to gaze into the great void without animal fear, accepting its own incredible insignificance and weakness. Rational scientific humility will completely and unconditionally supplant our former reckless confidence in our own intellectual infallibility. But until then, we remain conceptually utterly alone in the face of this gigantic and cold enigma. We continue to wander endlessly and blindly in the darkness of our own imperfect mathematical, cosmological models. Our fragile scientific paradigm flies through time, surrounded on all sides by a wall of total, unknowable uncertainty. We diligently write our scientific papers, completely unaware of whether they have any real meaning at all. This crushing existential uncertainty is the heaviest burden on our entire collective scientific earthly mind. Think about this frightening and incredible fact the next time you look at the clear night stars. You will never again be able to see there the familiar, friendly, completely understandable, and comfortably predictable mechanism of the universe. You will clearly see before you a gigantic, unknowable reality that deliberately and cruelly breaks all the rules. This beautiful, sparkling, starry dome above our fragile heads is full of incredible and, as yet, physically unsolvable mysteries. And the greatest of them will forever remain a gaping wound in the form of the Eridanus supervoid, 1 billion years in diameter. For centuries, we sincerely but naively believed that we perfectly and thoroughly understood the workings of our reality. We were absolutely and arrogantly confident in our basic equations of gravity and the strict laws of thermodynamic expansion. But now, our finest academic minds, with chilling fear, acknowledge their complete intellectual helplessness in the face of the facts. The more intently and deeply we peer into this black, icy abyss, the less human logic remains within it. Our sleek, modern picture of the world is beginning to crack at the seams under the pressure of a vast and merciless void. Our cutting-edge earthly science has suddenly turned into a pitiful attempt to measure infinity with a wooden school ruler. and we still have absolutely no real chance of finding the correct theoretical key to this broken mechanism. Our familiar universe turned out to be far from as symmetrical and predictable as we had always proudly imagined. It is much stranger, far vaster, and incomparably more terrifying than any of our wildest fantasies about space. And this gigantic hole in space is just the very first reminder of how little we know.